You've lived long enough to see patterns, to know that charm fades, that strength gets tested, that not everything this world promised actually matters in the end. And yet, here you are, still searching, not for approval, not for noise, but for something deeper, for clarity, for connection, for a way to be respected without ever having to raise your voice. Let me ask you this. How many men have you seen chase validation, money, attention, even love, only to end up feeling more alone than ever? How many of them had the looks, the confidence, even the charm, but something was still missing? It's not because they weren't good enough. It's because they never learned what truly holds weight in the eyes of others, especially in the heart of a woman. Most men grow older, few grow deeper, and that's what this video is about. Not tricks, not tactics, but presence. Not noise, but intention. You don't need to change who you are. You only need to remember the parts of you that the world made you forget. The subtle strength in silence, the calm steadiness of a man who doesn't need to prove himself to be powerful. Today, I'm going to share with you 7 quiet principles that most men ignore. But when you understand and live them, they shift how people feel around you, especially women. And not because you're trying to impress them, but because you finally carry yourself in a way that speaks for itself. This video is for the man who doesn't want to play games. For the man who's ready to let go of desperation and live with grounded dignity. For the man who's tired of asking, what do they want? And instead begins to ask, what do I stand for? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, the tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say, or think, or do, only what you do. That's the place I want to take you to. Because when you learn to live from that place, not only will women respect you more, but you'll begin to respect yourself in a way that's quiet, unshakable, and real. So stay with me, not because you need fixing, but because your soul's been waiting for someone to remind you of the man you were meant to be. Let's begin. Chapter 1. You're too available. You may not realize it, but being too available is silently stealing your power. Not just with women. With life, you say yes too quickly, you respond too fast. You show up even when you're not asked. And with every little gesture, every unspoken compromise, you're slowly teaching others that your time costs nothing, that your presence is easy to access. But here's the truth, what's always available is rarely valued. There was a time when your presence meant something, when you entered a room and people noticed. Not because you were loud, but because you were centered. Because your energy wasn't scattered, it was deliberate. Rooted, stoic. But somewhere along the way, maybe because you were trying to be kind or wanted to avoid being alone, you began giving too much of yourself. You gave your time, your energy, your attention, often to people who never truly earned it. And in that giving, you lost your edge. Marcus Aurelius wrote, let not your mind run on what you lack as much as on what you have already. But how can you appreciate what you have when you're always pouring it into others? When you're always leaking presence just to feel needed? You don't need to be needed. You need to be grounded. A Stoic man understands this. He doesn't seek connection through constant availability. He knows that his time, his peace, his presence, those things are sacred. And when something is sacred, it's protected. It's not given away casually. Let me tell you a story. There was an older man I once knew, wise, quiet. He rarely spoke in crowds, rarely reached out, but when he did speak, people listened. Not because of status or power or money, but because he had built a life of meaning behind the silence. His words carried weight because he didn't waste them. His absence created presence. He wasn't too busy, he was selective. He honored his own time. And in doing so, others honored it too. Ask yourself, when was the last time you made someone wait for you, not to manipulate them, but because you were tending to your own path first? Being less available doesn't mean being cold. It means being intentional. When you stop showing up for every call, every text, every situation that doesn't serve you, you begin creating space, and in that space, you become scarce. Scarcity creates curiosity. It creates value. Seneca once said, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those whom you are capable of improving." But what happens when you're always available to anyone, anytime? You lose the power of that exchange. You start bending, shrinking, adjusting, just to be accepted. A man who respects his own presence doesn't have to demand respect. He embodies it. So if you've been wondering why you feel unnoticed, why your kindness sometimes feels ignored, ask yourself this: are you present with purpose? Or just available out of habit? Because in this world, mystery is magnetic, stillness is strength. And restraint is not weakness, it's wisdom. When you begin practicing emotional discipline, you won't need to convince anyone of your value. They'll feel it in your absence. They'll remember it in your silence. They'll wonder what it is about you that feels different, and they'll lean in. But it starts with you. With saying no when it's easier to say yes. With letting unanswered messages sit. With walking away from conversations that drain you. And not to hurt anyone, but to finally return to yourself. You are not here to be everything for everyone. You are here to be fully yourself for the few who are worthy of it. So stop giving all of you all the time. Pull back, reclaim, refocus. Because the man who is always accessible may win quick attention, but the man who moves with presence and restraint, he earns quiet respect, and it lasts. And that is where your power begins to return. Chapter 2. Touch is not physical. There are moments in life when silence speaks louder than words, and there are moments when touch says what language never could. But the greatest mistake most men make is thinking that touch is purely physical. It's not. At its highest form, touch is presence made real. You see, a man can touch a woman's skin and still never reach her. But another man, one who is grounded, steady, and emotionally awake, can place his hand gently on her shoulder and make her feel seen, safe, and held in a way that stays with her long after he's gone. You are not just a body. You are a presence, and presence, when fully alive, moves through every gesture, every glance, every moment of stillness. Too many men believe that connection comes from what they say. They try to charm, to persuade, to impress with clever lines or confident talk. But the truth is, words fade. What stays is how you made someone feel, in the quiet, in the stillness, in the space between words. A woman doesn't remember the compliment you gave her. She remembers the moment when you simply looked at her, not to get something, not to impress, but to fully witness her. There's a deeper kind of touch, and you know it, you felt it. Maybe in a moment with someone who didn't say much but made you feel calm or safe or understood just by being there. Just by holding space, you can become that man, the one whose presence does more than any performance ever could. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And I'll tell you this, when your thoughts are still, when your breath is steady, when your attention is full, your presence begins to color every touch, every look, every moment. A simple touch, on the back of her hand, a gentle brush of her shoulder, the stillness of your hand before intimacy. It can speak 1,000 things. I see you. I'm here. You are safe. You matter, but only if you mean it. If you touch with impatience, she'll feel it. If you touch to gain something, she'll know. But if you touch with stillness, with attention, with reverence, it changes everything. And it's not just about women. This is about how you move through the world, how you shake hands, how you hug your child, how you place a hand on your friend's shoulder when he's falling apart. Touch, when guided by intention, becomes a language of the soul. Let me tell you a story. There was a Stoic elder who rarely spoke. When a young man once asked him for advice on love, he didn't give a long answer. He simply walked over, placed his hand on the young man's chest, looked him in the eyes, and said, "What you give from here is always remembered." It wasn't the words. It was the moment, the stillness, the gravity, and the truth that was felt more than heard. Touch is not about technique. It's about being fully present in your own skin, so that when you reach out, you're not just touching someone else, you're sharing yourself. A Stoic man is not cold, he is deliberate, he's not detached. He is anchored, and because of that, he can make someone feel more with a single gentle gesture than others do with endless words and empty noise. Seneca once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." But when your touch is real, when your presence is steady, you help someone come back to reality. Back to their breath, back to feeling safe in their own body. That is power. That is emotional leadership. So the next time you sit across from someone you care about, don't rush. Don't reach out to fill space. Wait, feel, be present. And then, when the moment is right, let your hand speak what your mouth cannot. Because in the end, a man's true strength is not measured by how much he says or how boldly he acts. It's measured by how deeply he makes others feel, without ever needing to try. Chapter 3. Flirt without trying. There's something quietly powerful about a man who doesn't chase, yet never feels overlooked. A man who doesn't try to impress, but somehow still leaves an impression. That's what real flirting is. Not performance, not seduction, but presence. Playfulness, stillness in motion. You don't need lines. You need depth. Most men flirt the way a salesman sells. They present, exaggerate, and hope for approval. But the Stoic man, he doesn't flirt to win. He flirts because he's already whole. He's not seeking anything. He's simply sharing his energy, calm, steady, and honest. Flirting without trying means you're not auditioning. You're just being. When you enter a room, you don't need to make noise. When you speak, you don't need to be clever. When you smile, it doesn't have to be perfect. Because when your attention is real, she feels it. And when you're not trying to impress, your presence becomes the very thing that draws her in. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." You don't need to be like every man who tries too hard, who masks insecurity with charm. You can be the one who doesn't chase, but is never forgotten. Not because you're aloof, but because you're at peace. Let's talk about energy. Flirting is not about what you say. It's about how you hold your gaze, how you pause before speaking, how you remain grounded in yourself. It's about offering warmth but not need, presence but not pressure. There's a kind of quiet confidence that says, "I enjoy this moment, but I don't need it." And that is magnetic. You can make her smile without even saying a word. Maybe it's the subtle raise of an eyebrow when she says something bold. Maybe it's a light, playful challenge that shows you're not intimidated.
Maybe it's the simple fact that you're not rushing, not leaning in too hard, just being there and enjoying her company.
That kind of interaction creates tension, the good kind, the kind that lingers. Seneca said, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Apply that to flirting. Most men suffer before anything has even happened. They overthink. They fear rejection. They play roles to avoid risk, but that fear is what strips them of their natural charm. When you stop fearing how you're being received and simply engage from a place of enjoyment, not outcome, you shift the entire dynamic. You stop reacting, you start guiding. And the beauty is, you don't have to say more. You can say less. Let your silences speak. Let your timing land. Let your body language lead. Here's a moment to remember. You're at a cafe, you're listening. She's animated, telling a story. You lean back slightly, your fingers resting on your glass, eyes focused. Not on her lips, not on her body, but on her meaning. When she finishes, you smile. Not because you're supposed to, but because you're genuinely amused. And you say, "You really believe that, huh?" Then you pause. Let the silence hang just long enough to make her lean in. That's it. You didn't try. You didn't push, you were just there, full. That's what most men miss. They fill the space, but you own it. Epictetus taught, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. And in relationships, in flirting, in connection, your greatest strength is to remain free. Free from overthinking. Free from outcome. Free from pretending. When you stop trying, you start attracting not just attention, but respect. And not just from women, but from yourself, because you're no longer caught in the need to be liked. You're rooted in the truth of who you are. And that makes you unforgettable. So next time you're in a moment that feels charged with possibility, don't perform, don't chase. Don't try, just be, just enjoy. Just lead with presence, not pressure. Because when you flirt without trying, you don't just create attraction, you create mystery. And mystery, when rooted in calm confidence, is what makes your presence linger, even long after you've walked away. Chapter 4, Gentle Power, the touch that speaks volumes. There is a kind of strength that doesn't shout, it doesn't need to. It moves quietly, it makes others feel safe, not because it dominates, but because it's deeply anchored. That's what gentle power is. And few things express it more clearly than a well-placed, intentional touch. Not for attention, not to take control, but to offer calm, reassurance, presence. Imagine this. You're walking beside her, a quiet evening. The world fades into background noise, and as you approach the door, without a word, you reach slightly ahead and open it. Your hand briefly touches the small of her back. Not to guide her, not to claim her, but to say, "I'm here. I see you. You're not alone." That single gesture, brief, effortless, but intentional, communicates more than 100 compliments ever could. Real masculinity isn't about being loud, it's about being solid. You don't touch to impress. You touch to ground, and that's the difference. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Look well into thyself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look." When you touch someone from that place, deep within your own steadiness, they feel it. Not in their body, in their nervous system, in their trust.
You're not pulling energy from them. You're offering your own calm as a shelter, and that's what so few men understand.
In a world full of force, dominance, and noise, it is the deliberate gentleness that becomes unforgettable. Let me tell you a story. A man once told me how he'd always tried to do things right on dates. Say the right words, pay the bill, smile at the right time.
But nothing ever stuck. One night, he walked a woman home. The conversation was soft.
The silence between them even softer. And as they reached her door, she turned to him. There were no words, just stillness. He raised his hand slowly, brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear, looked into her eyes, and stepped back. She told him later, "That moment, it made me feel more seen than anyone else ever had." It wasn't the gesture. It was the presence behind it. No tension, no expectation. Just presence. This is what Stoicism teaches us. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about mastering it. So when you extend yourself into the world, through touch, through word, through gaze, it comes from a place that is centered, quiet, and clean. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Freedom doesn't mean detachment. It means you don't need the moment to go a certain way in order to feel whole. So when you touch someone, you're not reaching to get something from them. You're simply sharing the stability you've earned.
A woman knows when a touch is rooted in need. She also knows intuitively when it comes from stillness. And in that moment, her body relaxes. Her walls soften. Not because she's being seduced, but because she feels safe. That's your job. Not to charm, but to create stillness where there was once noise, to build presence where there was once tension. And you do that with restraint, with timing, with emotional intelligence. Never touch because you want to be remembered. Touch because the moment calls for it. And you have the discipline to wait for that moment. Gentle power isn't rare because it's hard. It's rare because it requires self-control. And self-control is the foundation of every Stoic life. So next time you're with someone you care about, don't look for the perfect word. Don't try to fill the silence. Be still. Be fully there. Let your presence speak. And when the time is right, let your touch be a quiet reminder that real power doesn't push. It steadies. It grounds, it protects, without needing to be noticed. That's the kind of man who lingers in the memory. Not because of how much he did, but because of how deeply he made her feel, in just a single, effortless gesture. Chapter 5. Become her shelter. There is a quiet kind of man who walks into a room and doesn't demand attention, yet everything in the space shifts when he arrives. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't assert himself, but he holds an energy that says, "You're safe now." That is the man you are capable of becoming, not her hero. Not her savior, but her shelter. Protection isn't about power. It's about presence. You don't need to lift heavy things. You need to carry the moment with calm. You don't need to fight her battles. You need to stand beside her when she's uncertain. You don't need to fix her pain. You just need to be the place where her walls can finally fall. Seneca wrote, "He who is brave is free." And freedom, for her, comes not from being rescued, but from knowing that in your presence, she can let go. No masks. No roles, no pretending. Be the space where she can breathe again. Most men think being strong means stepping in only when there's danger, but Stoic strength is quieter than that. It's in how you stay calm when someone disrespects her. It's in the way you walk beside her when things get uncomfortable. It's in how you make sure she gets home safe,
not for recognition, but because it's what a man does when he's steady. Let me ask you this. When she's anxious, do you add to the storm or do you anchor her? When the energy is chaotic, do you react or do you hold stillness? Because that's what she's scanning for, not your muscles, not your charm, but your emotional posture. Can she lean on you when the world feels too heavy? This isn't about being controlling. It's not about dominance. It's about consistency. About being dependable, not once, but every time. There's a story of a Stoic man who was often ridiculed for not standing up in public debates. One day, after an intense exchange where he remained silent, someone mocked him, saying, "Why didn't you defend yourself?" He replied, "If I must explain my strength to be believed, then I have none." That kind of inner stillness, that refusal to react, is what makes a woman feel protected. Not because you're always fighting for her, but because your presence frees her from having to fight at all. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." A true Stoic man doesn't lose himself in chaos. He becomes the eye of the storm. He creates order not by force, but by embodying it. That's what being her shelter means. It's in the way you listen without interrupting, in the way you hold eye contact without judgment, in the way your tone doesn't rise when things get tense, and in the way you stay, not just physically but emotionally present, especially when things get hard, because most men run from discomfort, but you remain. Not to solve everything, but to be the one constant in a world full of noise. Let her feel your strength in your silence. Let her sense your steadiness in how you walk, how you pause before speaking, how you hold her gaze when she's unsure of herself. You don't need to promise her the world. You just need to be the man she can trust when the world stops making sense. And when you do that, not for praise, but because it is your nature, you become more than attractive. You become unforgettable. Because in the end, what women crave isn't just excitement. It's security in your presence, and that's something no words can offer. Only your calm. Only your consistency. Only the quiet strength of a man who knows who he is and stands still in that truth. Become her shelter. Not by shielding her from the world, but by being the kind of man who reminds her that no matter what the world brings, she's not facing it alone. And when you live like that, you don't just change how she sees you. You change how you see yourself. A man not defined by noise, but by the depth of his steadiness. That is the mark of a Stoic. Chapter 6. Mentioning a dream. There's something almost sacred about being remembered in someone's dreams. Because dreams aren't curated, they're not performed. They rise from the quiet, unguarded corners of the mind, where nothing is filtered and everything is felt. So when you say to a woman, "I had a dream about you last night," you're not just making conversation, you're opening a door. Not wide enough to invade, but just enough to invite. You're offering her a place in your subconscious, and that, for her, can mean more than any compliment ever could. But the power of this moment lies in how you deliver it. No theatrics, no manipulation. Just calm honesty, something simple, like it wasn't anything crazy. We were just sitting at a cafe talking, but it felt good. Like I'd known you for a long time. And then you let it sit. You don't rush to explain. You let the silence breathe, because in that moment she'll feel something that's rare in this world, an emotional tether without pressure. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, and when your thoughts are grounded, clean, and intentional, even the parts of you she cannot see begin to carry meaning. When she imagines you dreaming of her, she imagines herself being known without having to perform for it. This isn't a tactic. This is a moment of soft leadership, of emotional awareness, of still masculinity. A man who can speak of dreams without attachment is a man who is free from outcome, and in that freedom she feels safe to lean in. Think about it. Most men try to impress through performance. They say too much, they give too much. They crowd the space, but you mention a dream, not to be mysterious, but because it was real. Not to get a reaction, but to share a moment that came from somewhere unguarded. That's the difference. You're not trying to control how she sees you. You're simply offering a subtle glimpse into how she already exists in you. And that's what creates connection. Let me tell you a story. There was a man, mid-40s, quiet, balanced. He told me about a conversation he once had with a woman he admired. They had known each other casually for months, friendly, light-hearted. Then one evening, while walking together, he looked at her and said, "Strange, I had a dream last night. You were there." We weren't doing anything special, just talking, but it felt calm, familiar. She didn't say anything at first, just smiled. Weeks later, she told him that moment stayed with her more than anything else he'd ever said. Why? Because it wasn't planned, it wasn't loud. It was intimate without pressure. That's what Stoicism teaches us, to move from clarity, not craving, to let go of needing control, and simply be honest with restraint. Epictetus said, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." When you speak from that place, grateful, steady, unhurried, you give without needing anything back. Mentioning a dream is not about strategy. It's about revealing that someone has lingered in your mind without trying, and that's a rare feeling for anyone to receive. So the next time you feel it, don't force it. Don't rehearse it, just share it simply, calmly, as if you're offering a moment that passed through you, and now, gently, it belongs to both of you. Because when you can speak of dreams like that, without need, without fear, without ego, you show her something most men can't. You don't just live with confidence. You dream with it too, and that is what makes her remember you in ways even she doesn't fully understand. Chapter 7. The beard is a signal. It's easy to think a beard is just about appearance, a matter of personal style, a fashion choice. But for the Stoic man, it's something more. It's a symbol, a quiet signal, a reflection of your relationship with time, patience, and self-respect. A well-kept beard doesn't scream for attention. It suggests discipline. And in a world where so many men are chasing quick results, loud validation, and external approval, even something as simple as your beard can say, "I move differently." Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And that's true, not just in how you think, but in how you present yourself to the world. Your exterior becomes a mirror of your interior. A beard takes time. It takes restraint. It takes care. You can't rush it. You can't force it. You grow it with patience, and you maintain it with intention. It's not about ruggedness. It's about control. A wild, unkept beard says something too, about chaos, about indifference. But when you shape it, trim it, refine it, not out of vanity, but out of principle, you're sending a quiet message. I take care of what is mine. I tend to what I carry, and I respect the body I live in. This is about presence. You don't need to speak loudly when your very image speaks of stillness, maturity, and earned masculinity. Because whether you realize it or not, others pick up on it. The beard becomes a frame for the face, a marker of age, of experience, of authority that doesn't need to be proved. Let me share something real. A man in his late 50s once told me he'd always kept a clean shave because it felt neater.
But something changed after reading Marcus Aurelius. He started growing a beard, not because he wanted to look different, but because he wanted to practice patience in small, deliberate ways. Every morning, he groomed it, not rushed.
Not distracted, but mindfully. And in doing so, he said, I began showing up to the rest of my life with more care too. My work, my relationships, even how I listened. That's the point. It's not the beard itself. It's the man it teaches you to become. Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. That applies here too. Because at first, growing a beard may feel awkward. You'll be tempted to cut it early, to keep explaining it. But improvement, real growth, doesn't come from comfort. It comes from enduring the uncomfortable with grace. And that's what Stoicism is about. Doing small things with discipline, committing to slow transformation, becoming intentional, even in the way you carry your face through the world. A beard is primal. It taps into something deep in human instinct, protection, wisdom, leadership. It doesn't mean you're trying to intimidate. It means you're not afraid to embody masculine stillness, that you can be strong without being aggressive, that you can be seen without trying to be seen. Here's the truth. You don't need a beard to be stoic. But if you choose to grow one, and you treat it with care, you begin to walk differently. You begin to carry the image of a man who tends to the small things, because he knows that the small things shape everything else. And that is the signal, not the beard itself, but what it reflects. A man who is rooted, a man who is deliberate, a man who is no longer chasing impressions, but quietly building identity. So the next time you look in the mirror, ask yourself, what does the man staring back at you stand for? What does he signal before he says a single word? Because in the end, the beard doesn't make the man, but it can remind the man of who he's becoming. And in that silent reminder, he becomes unforgettable. Conclusion. Walk as the man you were meant to be. You've made it this far, not just through a video, but through a quiet reckoning. You've listened not just with your ears, but with that part of you that knows. You were meant to carry more than noise. You were meant to lead with stillness, to walk with presence, to love without needing, to be respected without ever asking for it. What you've just learned isn't about tricks, it's about truth. Truth about what it means to be a man who doesn't chase, but who draws others in through his energy. A man who protects, not by force, but by showing up fully and consistently. A man who doesn't need to prove his worth, because his daily actions already speak for him. Marcus Aurelius said, just that you do the right thing. The rest doesn't matter. And that's the path now set before you, to be the kind of man who leads by quiet example, to carry your dignity like armor, light but unbreakable. To make others feel safe, not by what you say, but by who you've become. So don't just let these ideas stay in your mind. Let them shape your habits. Let them color your presence. Let them become your philosophy in motion. Every choice you make, how you speak, how you touch, how you move, can be a reflection of the man you're quietly becoming. And when you live from that place, she will notice, but more importantly, you will. Now, if this message spoke to something deeper inside you, if you felt understood, even in silence, then you belong here. Like the video, subscribe, leave a comment. Let me know which chapter stirred something in you, not for the algorithm, but because this space is for men like you, men who don't run from depth but return to it. And remember, the Stoic man doesn't seek attention, he seeks truth, and in doing so, he becomes unforgettable.
I'll see you in the next one. Stay grounded, stay present, and walk as the man you were always meant to be.